I'm Greg DeRocher, President and CEO of the Cambridge Chamber of Commerce. The Chamber wanted to celebrate our community's contribution to this awesome country we call home, Canada. It's our 150th year. Our community is made up of 4 former communities: the Village of Blair, Town of Hespeler, Town of Preston, and City of Galt. This is our story and what we mean to Canada. Cambridge, Ontario is a diverse community and one of the most picturesque communities in southern Ontario. This is the Grand River, one of Canada's heritage rivers. The river is important to our community. It provides an important backdrop of deep heritage as well. In 1816, a speculator, William Dixon, a wealthy immigrant from Scotland, bought 90,000 acres of land along the Grand River and subdivided them and sold them off to predominantly Scottish settlers. Dixon decided at the time to name the post office Galt in honor of John Galt of the Canada Company, who was developing the area at the time. The area was growing rapidly, attracting industry, and by 1840, Galt was the largest town in the Grand River area all the way up until the early 1900s. In fact, Galt was called the Manchester of Canada because of the extensive industry it attracted, all powered by the Grand River. By 1870, Dixon Mills was operating, the Axe Factory Forge, Dumfries Iron and Brass, the predecessor to Babcock & Wilcock, or today known as BWXT. There was 2 furniture factories, the Victoria Steam Carriage Works, and many more. Business was humming. In 1852, the Galt Grammar School opened with William Tassie as a headmaster at the site now known as Galt Collegiate. Galt Collegiate is still a mainstay in our education system here in Cambridge, operating as a high school. But this place has also got some pretty important technological roots that put Canada on the international map. Some amazing Scottish architecture is on display in our community. And that old post office, well, the architect for that building was Thomas Fuller, a Canadian architect who is also credited with another truly Canadian building. He was the chief Dominion architect who played a role in the design and construction of every major federal government building, yes, including Canada's Parliament buildings. But not so famous in design or architecture is the Galt Arena Gardens. The Optimist Club broke ground in 1921 on this arena. Some famous stars played in this building, including one of hockey's greats, Gordie Howe, and even Wayne Gretzky when he was young. There were arenas built before this, but none have continually operated as long. This is the world's oldest continually operating arena. It had one major renovation only during its life, which brought back the original glory of this beautiful building. Just up the road from Galt, we find the Village of Blair, another important element in making up our now fantastic little community. Blair was settled by Samuel D. Betzner, one of the Mennonites from Pennsylvania. The village has one of the oldest European cemeteries in the region of Waterloo, dating back to 1804. Joseph Bowman, a man called Wismer, and John Bechtel were responsible for the early development of the community in an area laid out by Benjamin B. Bowman. They built a dam and then a sawmill and a grist mill, and in 1846 a large flour mill called the Bowman Mill, Blair Mill, and also the Carlisle Mill opened. In about 1876, a 15-horsepower hydroelectric system, the Sheave Tower, was built on Bowman Creek by Alan Bowman to help power the flour mill using a series of shafts and gears. This was a significant achievement in that era. The Sheave Tower was built in 1846, was restored back in 1999, and now open for the public to have a look at early Canadian ingenuity. It was one of the only surviving examples of auxiliary water power still standing. Langdon Hall is now one of Canada's most prestigious places to stay, and the culinary staff are among the best in the country. Prime ministers, movie stars, international dignitaries have all stayed and enjoyed the beauty of Crookston Park and all that Langdon Hall has to offer. The home was completed in 1902 as a summer home and originally built with 32 rooms totaling more than 25,000 square feet. Now we move back across the Grand River to the town of Preston. Remember that group of Pennsylvania Mennonites back in the early 1800s who settled Blair? Well, one of them was a gentleman named John Erb, who purchased 7,500 acres of land that included the confluences of the Grand and Speed rivers. Interesting, the name of the community was not Preston at first. You see, Mr. Erb built a small sawmill in 1806, and in 1807 he built a grist mill as well. And the settlement at that time was known as Cambridge Mills. By 1855, Preston was a large community of 1,600 people. Hotels and taverns were plentiful. Some 70% of the population were originally from Germany. The Del Monte and Sulphur Springs hotels were built to accommodate visitors who arrived via the Great Road to benefit from the mineral springs in the area. Sulfur content was believed to be useful for those with arthritis and rheumatism. People came from all over the world to bathe in the springs. In 1809, Cherry Flour Mills came to be, which later became Dover Flour Mills and is now a good chamber member as PH Milling, still producing flour for the baking industry. The Great Road, now called Number 8 Highway, as well as rail connections from Berlin, or Kitchener today, to Port Dover, made Preston an important industrial center. With the railroad running through the middle of town, industries like furniture, agriculture, implements, stoves, shoes, and textiles grew exponentially. An interesting tidbit about Preston: the story goes that a famous industrialist first looked at a property in Preston to launch his new idea of mass-producing automobiles. But Henry Ford just couldn't cut a deal with possibly the Erbs, so he ended up moving to Detroit. Just upstream from Preston, following along the Speed River, is the town of Hespeler, sitting on about 90,000 acres. The first settler will be a famous name to Hespelerites, Abraham Clemens, who bought the first 515 acres. Most of the land of early Hespeler was purchased by Joseph Oberholzer. He named the community Burgytown in honor of his brother-in-law. However, someone with more sense came to power, and in 1835 it became known as New Hope. A young settler by the name of Jacob Hespeler arrived in 1845, built an industrial complex that was the beginning of Hespeler's industrialization. Woolen and textile mills led the way, with a grist mill and sawmill to follow, as well as a tannery, tavern, but probably one of the most famous companies from Hespeler was the Hespeler Wood Products. This operation started in 1905, and many, if not most, of the NHL stars of the day used Hespeler hockey sticks made right here on the banks of the Speed River. They also purchased a company called St. Mary's Wood Specialty and started making St. Mary's baseball bats as well. Today, Cambridge is an important component to Canada's industrial and technological landscape. Companies like ComDev, satellite parts manufacturer, recently acquired by Honeywell, but their parts are in 80% of the satellites that circle the globe every day. They also make microsatellites the size of a dishwasher that can hover the Earth at a low altitude. And a spin-off company called Exact Earth. They monitor the world's shipping traffic in real time from a control room right here in Cambridge. Over 100,000 ships are on the waters of the Earth every day, and they have the data to prove it. Toyota Motor Manufacturing Canada landed here in the late 1980s, producing thousands of Toyota products each year, employing 8,000 people today. One of the milestones for them is the only Lexus luxury vehicle that is manufactured outside of Japan, the company's home country, is right here in Cambridge. Residents here manufacture and assemble the Lexus RX 450h. And in 2016, Toyota Motor Manufacturing Canada in Cambridge rolled its 7 millionth vehicle off the line. Shimco, a new manufacturer in Cambridge, is building shims for the aerospace industry that are vital to flight. Some of these shims are a quarter the thickness of a hair from your head. And then the Gore Mutual Insurance Company, well, they were a mature 27 years old when Canada celebrated Confederation 150 years ago. Cambridge has played a vital role in building Canada. In the early years of industrialization of Canada, rivers played an important role. They provided power. They were the power that built our community. We're proud of our contribution. We're excited about our continued responsibility to provide opportunity, challenges, and new ideas for Canadians of all backgrounds. We're proud to be Canadian, and the Cambridge Chamber of Commerce will be there for Canadians over the next 150 years, building community, helping businesses, and creating opportunities. Happy sesquicentennial, Canada. Let's do another 150 with pride.